Welcome to the Snooze Strategists, where we talk about designing work and life around your energy levels so you can work less, have bigger impact, and be healthier. And today, Ash and I are going to be talking a little bit about how do you listen to your body and understand your body's cry for help when it comes to sleep. And this is a topic that a good friend Jeremy Spitzer asked the question of, which is really, how do you know what are those sort of telltale signs that you're not getting enough sleep? And particularly when it comes to the workplace, how might this affect you? And what are those things to look out for? What are your thoughts on this, Ashen?
That's a good question, because we've been talking about fixing the effects of sleep, but we didn't really discuss in the past that how might we find or understand that we are having poor sleep. There are a couple of layers to it, or the quickest one, or the first line that you should check, I believe. Do you use an alarm clock to wake up? If you regularly wake up at a certain time, I think that's a good way to start. And also, the next step would be to figure out how might we, whether you sleep 7 to 9 hours. I think if you answered yes to those two questions, probably need to figure out a better strategy to get more sleep.
But are there any particular warning signs to look out for? So if I think about the workplace, I'm in the workplace and go about my day, what might some of the things be that I should look out for in terms of, everyone has their own highs and lows. We've talked about that. This the chronotype. Everyone's got their highs and lows during the day. We all get stressed in the workplace. So naturally, from time to time, we may carry stress. We may carry, higher or lower energy levels. Amongst all of that, which can be quite confusing, what else should we look out for in terms of, now something needs to change?
Yeah, that's true. I think the obvious one is the daytime sleepiness. So it's okay. As you mentioned, energy levels change, go up and down, and it's okay to feel a bit sleepy at certain times. But if you wake up and as soon as you wake up, you probably have a bit more energy, but then you feel that sleepiness fairly early on, like within half an hour, you are still I wish I had more sleep. That's a good sign. And that sleepiness will stay the same throughout the day, or it will get worse unless you can nap. So if you have that constant sleepiness and tiredness, that's a big indicator that you are not getting enough sleep. I think the other one, I sometimes personally feel, if I don't get my enough amount of sleep for myself, I feel like I want to do things, but it takes so much effort to move, so I don't have enough energy. So it's almost feel like I'm like a bit almost like a statue. I feel like I can't move out of my body. I think it's an indicator that you don't have enough energy to do things. So there's that tiredness overtaking your body.
So you've got a dip in physical energy. So the actual movement, and depending, most of us have got desk jobs where we're just sitting down, but others may have to physically move things around the office or the laboratory or whatever it may be, whatever the situation is. So some may feel that physical effect more than others. And then you've got that mental fatigue or draining. Is it that lack of focus?
Yeah, absolutely. I think you're spot on with that one. You have a sleepiness, which is different. That means you want to sleep and you don't want to do certain things. But the next layer below that is that slowdown of the cognitive abilities. So that's where, as you mentioned, that inability to focus properly. I'm sure we have experienced that at some point. We had very little sleep, go to work next day full of meetings. It's very hard to keep on top of things because you have to it takes so much energy, your body, to pay attention and retain that focus. So that's a great indicator as well that you can't focus on certain tasks, or your time frame that you can focus on certain things are shorter than your
Yep.
normal abilities. And memory is a good sign as well. Sometimes you keep forgetting things, whether once again that's in a meeting or you just had a chat to someone in the water cooler, but you came back to your desk, you're like, oh no,
That's me. That's me.
yeah, what did I talk about? And
Yeah.
yeah, if I don't get enough rest, I'm terrible at most of the time remembering the names. I was like, oh, I met someone new, but I can't remember their name. So that's a sign. Once again, your brain's a bit fatigued. You haven't had that sleep. And if it's few days in a row, some jobs are quite stressful. I remember I worked in operational areas where you constantly have to deal with a lot of staffing issues and make sure that there's enough staff working throughout the clock to get on top of certain workloads. So it really takes a massive toll on yourself. And if you don't get enough sleep, and if you had like difficult conversations with staff,
Yeah. Yep.
emotionally it's very hard to recover. I personally have experienced that many times. Sometimes it's a chicken and egg thing, whether that extremely stressful situation stops you from falling asleep, and the lack of sleep don't help you to recover. So it takes few days to get out of it. So a recovery from high emotional situations sometimes is quicker if you have enough sleep, because especially REM sleep helps to regulate that emotional state. That recovering from stress, if you're feeling anxious, feeling a bit down, that could be an indication that you're not having enough sleep.
Okay. So it's interesting there that you've mentioned, I guess, what we'd call resilience. So being the ability to bounce back. And I guess depending on your role at work, if you're in a management sort of role where you may have, you need to make a lot of decisions, or whether there's emotional situations. And yes, how quickly can you bounce back to that sort of like baseline and be effective and be productive?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
I think.
You go.
No, sorry. Go ahead, Alex.
Just thinking about that decision-making process and how the lack of sleep may impact when it comes to that point of making a decision. And just anecdotally, I've seen for some people, it often means an inability to make a decision. They don't have enough information at the time, or that's how they feel, or it may feel like a more emotional burden.
Yeah, I remember reading an article about Jeff Bezos saying he always try to get 8 hours of sleep because that's the optimum he need to make right decisions. And that's coming from a CEO from a conglomerate where key decisions, key tipping points that he have to navigate, right? If you don't have enough sleep, there's definitely a lack of slowdown in your cognitive abilities. So you may not be able to make the right call at the right time. At the same time, it will take a lot longer for you to make certain decisions because of that kind of mental fatigueness you have. So decision making is definitely compromised if you're not getting enough sleep. I think leaders have to be well rested, and they have to be on top of their feet all the time to stay alert and make these calls. So I think it's something definitely look out for. If you're very comfortable making decisions and at certain times you feel like you're a bit slow on that could be a sign that you're not getting enough sleep.
So for most people, doesn't this seem obvious? Is this something that isn't? Is it simple enough for most people to go, yeah, I'm struggling with my energy levels. I feel tired. I can't focus. I struggle to control my emotions. I'm a little bit antsy, a little bit tough in the workplace, etc., etc. Is it difficult for people to actually pick up on this?
I think the problem with sleep, because it happens every day, they don't sometimes realize, or they don't give the enough significance to sleep. We have talked about this in our previous episodes. This is where self-awareness should come in. If you need more coffee than your regular like in the past, that's a sign that something's not going well for you there. So you need extra boost of energy. You may not notice things if you are not self-aware enough. This is where the community part of our sleep journey that we have been talking for a while comes in, whether that's your partner, whether that's your work colleague. That's sometimes it's good to have a conversations with people around you to
Okay.
understand,
Yep.
oh,
Yep.
am I having, do you notice something different because I keep drinking multiple cups of coffees a day in the last few days? And the problem with that, whether legal stimulants or illegal stimulants, that can change the perception, because if you keep having coffees or Coca-Cola or any caffeinated content, you may not feel like you didn't have enough sleep because these stimulants will keep you up and going. So you have to be very
Yeah.
careful on that aspect, because sometimes they can mask the true condition or the true nature of the problem.
It's a good point that you can often, we've got a busy project for the next few months. I'm probably going to be
Yeah.
upping my Coke or coffee intake, and you do that. And I've done that as well. You know, you have more V or Red Bull.
Yeah, that's right.
Sort of go spikes as you require. It's like, oh, we're going to pull some all-nighters or whatever that may be temporarily, but then time passes and you don't realize that, oh, look, it's been 6 months and this is
Yeah,
my norm now.
yeah, that's right.
And your body probably feels it. I know your weight may fluctuate as well, et cetera, et cetera. So you're right that sometimes it slowly creeps up,
Yeah,
and therefore you may not realize it. And it may just be, and we all have those periods of time where it's like, you know, workplace stress, something has occurred, you know, got big project, big decision, et cetera, et cetera. So it's like you're doing your best to respond to that. But I think you've made a good point about it's good to have a conversation with friends or co-workers or family. They probably notice something, but it's hard to know if it's temporary, isn't it? It's like, you know, I might
that's
be
right.
grumpy for a week, which becomes weeks, becomes months, and it's like,
That's right. And that becomes new you.
Yes. Yeah. And then you're known as the grumpy person, right?
That's right. That's right. And then you're all of a sudden the grumpy person, and you are grumpy
Yeah.
about that. It just keeps going on
Yeah.
and on.
Yeah.
That's where I think that community power of community comes in, and say, hey, Alex, you look a bit different. Is everything all right? And kind of have a conversation around that.
Okay. Any thoughts on what's a good way, because it takes time? Are there any thoughts on how to actually keep an eye on yourself? Whether it's like how do you assess yourself on a daily basis or a weekly basis, or something to keep it topical so it's on top of your mind?
Yeah, I think one thing comes to my mind. I remember reading that in one of your articles you posted about retros. I think you were saying you were doing that with your family. I wonder whether every week, every fortnight, whether it's good idea to stop and look back at the past 2 weeks and see how you felt, like have a proper conversation with yourself. And how long did I sleep last night? Or is that my norm now? I sleep 5 hours, but back in the day I used to sleep 8 hours. So
Right. Yeah.
little things, just compare and see where things are heading. And coffee is another good thing. Oh, I've been spending $15 on coffee a day now at office.
Right. Yeah.
What's going on here? Like, do a bit of I guess retrospective on yourself, probably a good idea. And definitely try to make sure when you set the alarm in the morning, if you do, make sure it's at least 8 hours so you can get that adequate amount of sleep. And I think those will be great first steps to keeping yourself, make sure you are in check with the right amount of sleep.
Yeah, no, that's some really good tips there, just in terms of, particularly in the workplace, having a conversation, having a ritual, even openly discussing health goals. Make it and it should be part of your health and well-being sort of program in the workplace,
Yeah.
but even within your teams, make it something that's a priority. Sleep is part of your broader health and well-being, your mental health, etc. So put in place some things that support the tracking of it, discussing, there's a little bit of a quant and qual component to it there. But I think that's really good point. It's keeping in mind that there may be also smokers out there. They still exist, and
That's true.
back in the
Yeah.
old day, like you could tell the stress levels of some of the team members by how often they were just disappearing to have a smoke.
Smoke. That's
Um,
right.
and now the coffee is the new cigarette, and just in terms of how often do people pop out, and you'll hear people say, oh, I've had X number, so they've got
Yeah.
an awareness, but they may not have that awareness of, are you okay, you seem pretty much under the pump, or you're
Yeah.
busy, and you hear that sort of dialogue around the office. But I think it's good, to have a conversation, be aware of it, whether it's about tracking your own sleep, but it doesn't make it it helps to avoid an awkward conversation if it's just about checking in on each other more
Yeah,
regularly.
that's true. I think it's probably a good step towards having better connected teams around you as well. I think
Mm,
we probably lost that connection aspect of work in the last few years.
mm, mm. Brilliant. Okay, so let's leave it there. Just in terms of, there's a great spread in particular of symptoms to look for. I mean, you obviously, you've got that physical energy component, but there seems to be a plethora of cognitive impacts as
Yeah.
well, in terms of the lack of ability to focus, the reasoning, the emotional control. What are some of the other components there?
Um, yeah, change of energy. Emotional components could be the stress, anxiety. You could be quite irritable. So if you are the new grumpy person in the office, probably a good time to check in. Memory issues and long-term lack of sleep could be causing a bit of immunity issues. So if you're getting sick quite regularly, probably worth asking yourself, are you having enough rest?
So that's a few things to consider. We'll put a short list of these recommendations or symptoms to be aware of in the comment section. We'll also put them in the podcast text as well. So that's a nice sort of succinct response to this question. Let's leave it there. I think we've got a follow up to this, which is also, this starts to get into that world of, okay, there's things that we can control, as it is in the typical individual can control their inadequate sleep. But first of all, you need to be aware that you've got inadequate sleep. But then what happens if it's something that is beyond your control and we start moving to that disorder space? Which is a great topic for the next one. Like, how do you tell the difference between, I just need more sleep versus actually I've got a disorder and there's some health issues that are a little bit more nuanced and require a different set of solutions to support. So we'll leave there, and thanks for that, Ashton. It was a good breakdown. And for everyone else, feel free to like and subscribe. We still love to get some commentary around what you've heard, and your feedback will help us sort of focus on future episodes. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.